What's up, everybody? When it comes to the Battletech setting, there's a lot of lore here. It's pretty lore dense. There's a lot going on, and not just in the big, bad, awesome stuff of mechs and dropships and war gear equipment, but also in the ancillary stuff that really doesn't do anything in most situations, rules wise or enhancement wise in the games. Not really in the video games. Not really in the manager games. Maybe the tabletop role playing game, but still has lore nonetheless. And we're going to look at one of those systems because it's actually really critical to mech functionality, but isn't really represented in the games outside of the fact that you see the pilots wear them. And I'm referring to helmets. Always wear your helmet, especially as a mech warrior, because it's a neural helmet. What does that mean? We're going to find out. I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem. This is a bit of a lore dive, lore primer dive, if you will, into the Neurohelmets of the Battletech universe. Now, while aerospace pilots can also wear a neural helmet and tend to, we're looking at the mech warrior specifically because mechs are the bread and butter of the setting. So what the heck is a neural helmet? Well, we have to understand the mechs a little bit more. See, mechs are multi-story advanced technology in the form of being multiple stories tall, powered by a fusion engine as their power plant, and utilizing different forms of actuators, pistons, and solenoids and like, in addition to myomer musculature, which allows the mech's limbs to hold itself upright and maneuver and do things. You see, a mech with no pilot that is powered up can be ordered through programming and like to do very, very basic actions. It can torso twist, it can walk, it can maneuver a little bit, but it's a very rudimentary form of autopilot because the computer system, while very powerful for the mech to be able to process all the data needed to when you think about a multi-story thing with lots of sensors and the like, it's programmed to prioritize the conservation of the chassis. So it's always going to do things to stay more or less level. It's not really going to do anything in regards to uneven terrain very well. It's going to sense the area and maybe back off. It might take a step forward, put the foot down, take a reading, and go, you know what, I don't like this, and then back up and just stand there or what have you, theoretically, right? This is because the mech doesn't have a true-born AI in that sense. And I don't mean a clan, true-born warrior AI. I mean, it just doesn't have an AI. It has just advanced programming. No AI, nothing like a 40K machine spirit, quote unquote, either. It's just advanced computer programming. This is where the pilot comes in. Through pilot's intervention, right, it will coax the mech to move forward, and basically you pilot it to do things the mech just wouldn't do on its own. Run through a swamp, go uphill, go into a combat zone, things of that nature, right? You are piloting the mech to go and do the things it's designed to do. But your hand and feet controls only go so far, plus any other button, knobs, dials, and switches as well. There is one other way in which you help control this mech. That is the neural helmet. You see, this is a sophisticated piece of technology that is more or less just written off as a cool looking helmet. And sometimes in certain games and the like, isn't even showcased, which is fine. Not a big deal. The games are still fun, right? So let's not get hung up on that. But the Neurohelmet is incredibly important. And just like other pieces of technology, there is a difference between Inner Sphere and clan versions as well as Star League kind of relic versions. But with that said, they all do the same principal function to the same degree, basically, and that is to link you with your mech. Now, this isn't done Matrix style. There's no data spike that's going to go into your body. What it's doing is it's reading your brainwaves and utilizing your sense of balance from in your ear as well to assist the mech's sense of balance, and also just more or less allow the mech to not only respond to your controls, but in a way respond to your intent is the best way I can describe it based on how the lore is written. And this allows the mech to really be utilized to its fullest potential, and the more veteran the pilot and capable they are integrating with their neural helmet and integrating with their mech, the more crazy stuff you can see a mech do. So that's pretty interesting. You are not only the pilot, but also kind of another computer program, or at least a self-mental datum point for the computer to utilize its programming. I'm not going to say you become a machine spirit-esque thing like in 40K or or you become like a form of AI for the computer. But in a sense, it's approaching that concept when you think about it. Now, as far as reading brainwaves, we do that in real life, right? We have machinery that can, or tech that can read brainwaves, and we even have technology that allows our brainwaves, thought more or less, to control things. And we're getting there. It's rudimentary, still in progress, still in prototyping and research, but the idea of reading brainwaves is not far-fetched as you might think upon first hearing that. It's technology that exists. However, what this Neurohelmet is doing in conjunction with the mech is, I think, definitely order of magnitude above what we have the capability to do with our current understanding in tech. Because, like I said, it's also utilizing your inner ear for balance support, and it's responding to kind of your intentions in your brainwaves thoughts. It's not reading anything super complex, right? But it's just trying to instead focus on specific centers of the brain. And these signals, more or less, are going to help it maintain balance and do certain things. So it's not looking to literally read your mind. You're not using ESP to control the mech, but in conjunction with your pilot training and Neurohelmet integration and understanding and training in that regard, you can do things that are way more complex than what the controls of the mech might have you believe possible. How complex, you ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked, random viewer. In the lore, in a controlled environment, there was a pilot who could get their mech to do a handstand. Why? Probably a crazy bet at a bar, but nevertheless, whatever the reasoning, according to the lore, supposedly anyway, from what I've been able to read and look into to try and confirm this, supposedly according to the lore, a mech is able to be controlled and piloted through the Neurohelmet and the hand controls and everything to, in a controlled environment, of course, do a handstand, which it's got to be a sight to see, right? So that's the level of integration and control you can have with your mech with experience and Neurohelmet, and experience with the Neurohelmet, of course. Now, with this being the case, it's reading your brainwaves either by the helmet resting directly on your head and taking a reading from directly resting on it, like we kind of do with certain sensors now, or is doing it with an air gap, kind of, which is allowing it to be called quote-unquote remotely. It's still the helmet, but instead of the sensor resting directly on your head, it's able to do it from a distance. The more sophisticated the helmet, Clan Tech, for example, and Starlink Tech, the more chances are, or specifically, they're going to do it at a distance and not just resting atop your head. However, it's important to note, regardless of technological creation, whether it's an Innosphere or Clan design or whatever, all Neurohelmets perform the integration with the battle mech function more or less the same, or to a full degree. It's not like you have a limited degree with your Innosphere tech or anything, not at all. And all helmets, no matter how torturous some might seem in design, are relatively comfortable to wear. Relatively, because comfort's going to be a personal thing. And some of these helmets, particularly on the Innosphere side, rest on your shoulders, basically limiting your ability to move your head, which can be uncomfortable for people, for sure, if you like to have your head be very mobile and swivel on your neck and shoulders, right? So some people just move their head around more than others. Regardless, though, the actual helmet itself, in terms of weight and proportion and everything else, is going to be more or less comfortable to wear, which is good because you, as a pilot, will be wearing this for a very long time each day. Theoretically, potentially, right? So on top of providing those functions, the more sophisticated the helmet, the more functions are built into it, such as a filtration or straight up oxygen supply, such as the heads-up display allowing you to cycle between different enhanced visual capabilities, even toggling a big zoom or whatever for you based on sensory data and whatever else. And thanks to the Neurohelmet portion of the helmet, right, you don't need to do as many things manually, right? Maybe you're able to target a mech without having to hit some type of button. You're just looking at the mech and go, I want to target. You have the intention of targeting it, and you target it. Or you could also, put your crosshairs, your cursor more or less, your crosshairs on the mech, and you press a button. Whatever the case is, the Neurohelmet's going to allow you to have the mech do more organic style of movements and do more complicated stuff based in your input than if you didn't have the Neurohelmet for the mech to more or less read your intention and treat you as kind of part of its programming. Now, this is a bit of a two-way street, meaning while it's reading your mind, you're also getting input from the mech. Now, not directly ESP style, but more or less the input comes in the form of typically discomfort. If the mech's taking tremendous damage, let's say it takes critical damage and loses a whole side torso, and things are flaring, the mech's got a bunch of alarms going off, you're going to get a feedback from that in the form of discomfort and even potentially disorientation, because if the mech just lost sense of balance, it's utilizing your sense of balance to assist its sense of balance, which means now you just lost your sense of balance. It's unfortunate, but it can happen. But a competent mech warrior can recover and either punch out of the mech if necessary, and eject, or can wrest control of the mech, keep it in control and get behind the cover, get away, and live to fight another day. So it's a bit of a two-way street in that regard, which you would expect considering the mech is kind of operating to a degree off of your intent of your brainwaves, so it's going to impact you as well. Now, the mech or the Neurohelmet itself won't fry you. That's not a thing that happens, although theoretically it could for security, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So, with all that said, there is a learning curve, of course, as you would expect. Not just a learning curve for your Neurohelmet, but also for the mech you pilot. You see, you may have you and your Neurohelmet integrated pretty well. The Neurohelmet's accustomed to your brainwave length, and it's all saved data, and everything else for the helmet to just integrate with you. And if you're a true-born warrior, it's even better, right? But every mech you integrate with has got to get used to you, and you more or less got to get used to it. Again, it's not an AI or a 40K type of machine spirit thingy. It's a brand new computer mapping your brainwaves for itself. And there'll be discomfort there. There'll be headaches and minor disorientation in the very beginning, and you're going to have to get accustomed and used to the mech. But as the integration becomes, better and better, those go away, and you get access to just more intuitive movement. A really good example of the intuitive movement, in my opinion anyway, would be Sakan Weaver's fight against Battletech's Battlemaster. In that cutscene, you see movement on both sides that's a bit more than just maneuvering and twisting a torso and trying to line up a shot on the target. We see the Battlemaster raise its arm to block the cockpit and send a torso from shots in the very opening, and we see Sakan Weaver's Timberwolf take an extra style of securing, stabilizing step once it loses one arm, and then once she's victorious and she stomps down on the Battlemaster, that stomping down was more than just a standard walk. That was the mech's reading of her intention to stomp on that thing. And then when she backed off of it, we didn't see any overt movement. I'm sure she did some movement with her arms off camera, but between that and the Neurohelmet, we got the mech backing off and getting a more stabilized stance. Things that you could, of course, attribute to just really expert piloting, of course, but is definitely made manifest even more so by the Neurohelmet integration, which is a nice added touch, knowing the lore. If you don't know the lore, it just looks like really great piloting, which is also cool too, so you don't lose anything. But when you know about the Neurohelmet and the lore, and the fact that they bring up the Neurohelmet in the game, and that's what all the pilots wear, including your pilot Jaden and everything, it's a nice added layer to what you're watching when you start thinking about it in the terms of the lore of it. In any case, security. Theoretically, if you stole a pilot's Neurohelmet and put it on to access their mech to steal it, you're going to have a problem. And not just theoretically, you will have a problem. Chances are your brainwave, the data of your brainwave, will not mesh with the pilot's brainwave that you stole it from. And I'm not saying that our brainwaves, because I have no idea. If you're a scientist, let me know. I don't know if my brainwave is going to be on the same wavelength, more or less, or the same day in and day out all the time. I'm sure there might be some minor variables, but for the most part, especially after, let's say, hundreds of operational hours with your Neurohelmet on, it's going to be accustomed to your wavelength profile, let's say. So if somebody new puts on your helmet, it's not going to know what's going on. It's like, this is not my pilot. It's going to disorient the wearer. The mech's going to also be resistant because it's basically a new pilot doing something. So that's definitely going to disorient the wearer. Plus, security measures could kick in, and that device that's reading the brainwaves could amp up. And amping itself up and becoming more and more focused and powerful, it can disorient and even harm the would-be criminal, which is definitely no good. So you have a theoretical security device built in to the Neurohelmet because, well, like your fingerprint, it's your brainwave. So, I mean, if you don't match up, that's not good. This is why I suspect, while you could theoretically have just a Neurohelmet stuck inside the mech at all times that whoever pilots the mech wears, more than likely the Neurohelmet you will take with you, kind of like you take your car keys. It's your Neurohelmet, and at least with that Neurohelmet, you can integrate with any battle mech. Now, of course, there's ways to hack the security protocols in a mech so you can steal it. We see that all the time in the lore, especially in certain video games, not just MechWarrior 5 Clans, but others. So that's possible, but it's still not going to work well for you, especially if you utilize a Neurohelmet that's not yours, because chances are, more than likely, your brainwaves are not going to be close enough for the helmet to not realize. So pretty sophisticated there. Outside of that, not much else to say on the Neurohelmet. The more advanced the Neurohelmet, the more extra features it has. Maybe some life support system. Maybe you can integrate to a spacesuit, right? So you can be like a Gundam pilot and have a complete integration so you can have life support and be sealed from the vacuum of space should you find yourself in there. Different heads-up displays, of course, will depend upon the faction using it. Draconis Combine Forces may do things a bit differently with their Neurohelmets display than House Steiner, for example, which will do stuff different from Clan Wolf, which does stuff different from Clan Jade Falcon, and so on and so forth down the line. But that's probably more of a UI customization thing than integral to the overall functionality of the mech, really, when you think about it. Whether or not it's resting on your shoulders, it's going to be comfortable no matter how torturous it looks, which is a nice added touch, by the way, to MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries. Every pilot's mugshot, more or less, incorporates the Neurohelmet, and we see different designs, which is pretty cool. And with that said, the most advanced, sophisticated of Neurohelmets out there are going to be some relics left over from the Star League era, although Clan Neurohelmets are pretty close there as well. The more advanced the Neurohelmet, the more features that can happen, and with super advanced Neurohelmets and really good integration, you could basically Gundam Epion this thing and have your cockpit shuttered and just utilize the augmented reality kind of heads-up display that you get from that level of integration with that powerful of a Neurohelmet. Of course, the stronger the integration, the more taxing it's going to be on you. In the lore anyway. But you definitely could, if for whatever reason you needed to shutter your cockpit so you couldn't see out of it, you could utilize your Neurohelmet to really give you an augmented reality view of things and just have that heads-up display also display everything that you would normally see, but in like three-dimensional polygonal imagery. And you could do combat that way if that was for some reason necessary, which is also pretty interesting. Anyways, with that said, that's all I got for you. Kind of a random bit of Battletech lore, but I enjoy the lore of this setting a lot. There's a lot here to discover and just be a fan of if it's up your alley, right? If you're just a fan of the mech and the mech combat and everything, that's cool too. It's definitely a big part of the setting and a big driving force, but I enjoy getting into different settings. Maybe I'm weird that way. Let me know in the comments if you're similar. In any case, thanks so much for making it to the very end of this video. If you did, comment the word neuron, just so I know you made it to the very end of this video. Consider subscribing. Since you made it this far, chances are you'll like other videos that come in the future as well as stuff already here. And consider checking out my Twitch link in the video description. I do go live fairly often, not just with MechWarrior, but with other stuff. Always welcome people hanging out and conversing. In any case, with that shameless stuff out of the way, thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. And until next time, take care.